Hey, what's up you guys? I'm here today with another Star Wars book review. This is Eyes Like Stars by Ashley Poston, and I've tried to go for a theme here, as you can see, just so you know, everyone's very aware of what kind of book we're talking about today. But this is Eyes Like Stars, and it is being sold as a Star Wars romance novel, and as you can see, there's this branding on the front cover and on the spine, which makes me believe this is going to be a new initiative that Disney and Lucasfilm are pushing, which is very interesting and very exciting. So I want to kind of talk about the differences between this book and a lot of the other Star Wars books, because even though this is the first time they're publishing under a Star Wars romance novel, it's not the first story or novel that has romance in it, obviously, but I do think that there is some very key differences in the way that this has been written compared to some of the other books, so we're going to talk about that briefly. But yeah, I'm just really interested in this whole thing they've got going on here. I think obviously they're trying to capitalize on the huge popularity of the romantasy genre, and if you're not super into Star Wars, you might think, well, Star Wars is sci-fi, which is similar to fantasy, but it's not really. But Star Wars like rides that line directly in the middle, where you hear this phrase all the time, like space wizards. Like, Star Wars is technically sci-fi, but it really depends on the tropes and conventions of the fantasy genre. And I think that this book exemplifies that so much. I actually really love this book, and I'm excited to talk about it. I'm going to talk about the characters, the story, the whole romantasy genre. I haven't read that many romantasy books that are like the kind that are trending right now. I obviously am a huge Shadowhunters fan, which is like very heavy romantasy, but they were written before this kind of current wave. So I haven't read that many current like romantasy, like TikTok trending romantasy genre books, but I do like romance books, I like fantasy books. I read Shadowhunters, I like Twilight, you know, the classics. So I'm excited to talk about this today. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and please subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on this book down below. If you've read it, if you've not read it but you sound interested in it, anything at all, just an emoji, that's fine too. And hit the like button, and yeah, let's get started talking about the book. So when I was going into reading this book, obviously because it is branded with the romance kind of title here and on the spine, like I said, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to try and experience this differently from other Star Wars books and kind of just think of it as a romance book first and then like a Star Wars book second, because like I said, other Star Wars novels have romance as subplots, but the fact that they are like really hyping, okay, this is a romance book, I was like, I'm going to try and take like the Star Wars at my brain a little bit and just think of it as a romance book and kind of understand how successful that is. So the first thing you need to understand, this is obviously a YA book and it is obviously Disney, so there is not going to be anything super steamy. There's no smut really. There is a mention of smut, which I was quite interested by. I thought that's pushing the boundary just a little bit, like just a tiny toe over the line. But it is obviously like a very like PG, teenage friendly, family friendly romance book that, you know, does still ramp up like the kind of emotions of like when their bodies are close together and, you know, they can feel each other's body heat, and like, you know, it does go into stuff like that, but there's nothing sexual at all. So I feel like that's pretty obvious, but I feel like I want to just like get that clear, just in case, because I know that a lot of people do now really love like the really smutty, steamy romance books, and this is definitely not that. This is still a Disney, Lucasfilm, Star Wars branded romance book. So the thing that I noticed right away was that the main two characters and their kind of meet cute is very tropey, but I feel like some people hear the word trope and think that's a bad thing, but I understand that, especially in the romance genre, books are basically advertised as their tropes. You know, I follow some romance authors and stuff on Instagram, and they are always hyping up what tropes are in each book because romance readers really crave that. And the meet cute here, well, okay, first of all, the characters. So our main protagonist is Ardent, and she is daughter of a captain of a like tour company, and that is fun because it means that we get to go to lots of different planets that we're all familiar with through Star Wars, if you're a Star Wars fan. If you're not, they're just fun planets. But she obviously has been living on this family ship basically her entire life, and her mother died when she was younger, and you know, her dad's like super protective, and she is the good girl, but she has that kind of like craving for adventure, and she wants to do a little bit more of her life. She's wondering what's out there in the galaxy, but she's too scared to go for it. And she's also, what I loved, I thought it was like kind of meta, she loves romance novels herself, except they're not novels because it's a Star Wars, so they're like holo serials. But the meet cute actually happens when she is away down on Coruscant looking for the like final volume of this holo serial that her mother loved when she was younger as well. And that's when she bumps into our love interest who, okay, so I had to Google what his name is. When I've been reading this, I've been reading it as Xian or Cyan. No, Cyan. I've been reading it as Cyan, but it's spelled S-I-A-N. And before I filmed this video, I was like, I need to figure out how to pronounce this because, you know, that's important. And everyone is saying that it's an Irish name, which is basically pronounced Sean. So I'm going to call him Sean. I may accidentally switch up, but in my head I was calling him Cyan, but everyone on the internet is saying it's Sean. So anyway, he is a bad boy. He's on the run. They bump into each other, like physically bump into each other, that classic kind of situation. And the people that are after him, which are the First Order, because this is set just before the events of the sequel trilogy for the Star Wars films. They are after him, and because she's bumped into him and he kind of grabs her hand and they help each other, they're then after her as well. So she decides that she is going to help him by hiding her on her family ship. And they have this whole agreement, like he can't be seen, he has to hide down in the basement. To ships have basements. You know what I mean? And he's to get off at the first stop. Obviously that doesn't happen. Things keep progressing. There's always a reason for him to stay, and she wants him to go, but she doesn't want him to go. And there's also this whole subplot with her brother, who has been missing for 4 years. He basically ran away and he'd had enough of their father and was like, I need to get off the ship, I need to have adventure. And now he's back, so she's got that stress of like her brother snooping around and this boy that she has a crush on, but she only just met, and she knows that he's a bad boy, and she doesn't want that, but she also like does kind of want that. You can picture the whole situation. And I just really love the characters, I love the dynamics, I loved that while it was a slow burn in a sense, there was like an instant attraction from both of them, and they both acknowledged that, and I really like that because sometimes with romance books, I find it a little bit tiring where like one character is like, oh, I don't want him, I'm not interested in him, oh, he's so weird, oh, blah, 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 blah. When you know, obviously, you're reading a romance book and they're going to get together eventually. Both characters in this don't really even try and hide the fact that they are into each other to an extent. Literally from the first moment they meet, they have like a spark between them. And as the story progresses, that goes bigger and bigger. But basically, even from night one, he is meant to be hiding in the basement. Hull? I don't know. I'm not a ship person, especially a spaceship. They don't even exist. Well, do they? NASA. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He doesn't listen, and he comes up and he's like mingling with the guests, and then him and her have this dance, and you know, like they're very close basically from like day one. So I really like that dynamic, and I loved how there's always like a reason for him to leave, but there's also always a reason for him to stay. And then the story obviously goes to some really fun places. I do think as the story progresses, it becomes more of a Star Wars book, and like my door buzzes go. As I was saying, as the story progresses, I do feel like it becomes more of a Star Wars novel than a romance novel for a little while, but that is also, you know, I was thinking of like a typical romance book, and the entire thing is not just the relationship. Like the characters also always have, like, they're either in school, university, they have jobs, they have weird career things or family things that are getting in the way. So I was thinking of it that way, and I was like, well, every romance book does have like a whole world around the characters. It's not purely just the two characters having romantic moments from start to finish. That's not realistic. So I think that while it does tend to lean more Star Wars near the end, I don't think that's unlike the rest of the genre, to be honest, because the protagonist always has some sort of like external thing going on outside of the relationship, and it's kind of that pressure of the new budding relationship and romance with their like life, you know, that tension coming together. I think that's always a staple of the genre anyway. So I would say that if you are not a Star Wars fan, I'm trying to think, it's hard to, because obviously I've read so much Star Wars, I've watched so much Star Wars at this point, so I'm like trying to put myself in the shoes of someone who like isn't really that much of a fan of like the wider Star Wars world. It's probably just seen like a couple films or whatever, and I feel like I want to say this isn't any different from diving into like any new romance fantasy story where there's always fantastical elements, there's always bad guys and good guys, and you know, the threat of a war or something like that. I feel like the romance and, well, not romance, fantasy always has that going on. So I feel like this probably isn't that different. Like I do think that there is a really good explanation of everything that is Star Warsy in this. Like when the First Order are introduced, they're not introduced in a way that it's like the author is assuming that you always know who they are. Same for other elements that are like Star Warsy. But also, it's hard for me to say because obviously I am like so deep in the Star Wars like lore. So I do think that if you're a romantasy fan, I think that you would enjoy this even if you're not a big Star Wars fan. If you're just a romance fan and not so much romantasy, I'm not so sure if you would love this because the romance is, like I said at the start, it's a little bit more PG, a little bit more, not basic, but it's like safe. It's like a family-friendly romance. It's not rocking the boat, you know. Even like Twilight Breaking Dawn, that's a lot more steamy than this ever gets. So just think of it in that way. But if you are a romantasy fan, I honestly do think that you might enjoy this, especially if you like YA romantasy. If you are someone who's deep in like the smutty, adult, insane stuff that goes on in, you know, the kind of romantasy books that people talk about in videos online, this probably isn't going to do much for you. But if you like YA books, if you like YA romance, I think that you would get a lot out of Eyes Like Stars. It is really well written. The characters are fun. They're a little bit tropey, but also they're also unique because they are Star Wars and that makes it different. And then I was going to say about other Star Wars romance books. So obviously when I was thinking about this compared to other Star Wars books that have romances in them, I feel like this is probably like 60% romance, 40% Star Wars, whereas the others are probably like 70% Star Wars, 30% romance. And I do think that the fact that this leans into those kind of tropes and conventions of the romance genre is what makes it different and what makes it deserving of this kind of label compared to other books that, you know, just have like a romance as like a subplot going on between two of the characters. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I actually would recommend it quite a lot to most people, and I think that most people would get something out of it. Even if you're not a super Star Wars fan, I think you would probably enjoy this. I hope you enjoyed this video and you found this review useful. I did not script this at all. You've probably guessed that by now. I'm just like talking because I finished this yesterday and I just enjoyed it so much that I wanted to share it with you. So I think that is like a glowing recommendation of its own. The fact that I finished this and was like, I need to make a video about this book. So yeah, if you have any questions about this book, let me know down below. I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. Like I said, all details are pretty fresh in my mind and I really enjoyed it. So I think that if you're a romance fan, you're going to probably enjoy this. Anything else I need to talk about? Oh, I done a recent video, another Star Wars one, and that was on the Padme trilogy, and I will link that down below in the description. I absolutely love that trilogy, and I think that if you're the type of person who's going to enjoy this book, you'd probably also enjoy the Padme books. And I just love that Star Wars is like so expansive and can bring all these different subgenres together under like the Star Wars umbrella. And I really do hope that they continue with this Star Wars romance novel kind of line. I think that's interesting. I wonder what other ones they could do, like Star Wars thriller, Star Wars horror. You know, there's so much opportunity there for interesting stories. So I hope that they really take this opportunity and run with it. And I hope this book's successful. I think Ashley Poston's a great writer and she really blends all the elements together really well. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, please subscribe, leave a comment, anything at all. Let me know that you enjoyed this video or just questions or whatever. If you hated the video, you can tell me that as well. And I will see you in my next one. Thank you for watching.